At 72, Leonard Hayes wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the cliff edge. The group hike was simple, just a steady walk toward a lookout they all knew. The morning fog was thicker than usual, but no one worried. Leonard stayed in the middle of the group, talking about how he still preferred paper maps over apps. Then the small rockfall happened. A sharp crack echoed from above. The guide raised a hand. "Everyone hold still!" Leonard turned toward the sound. One pebble slid past his boot. Another bounced. He stepped back, instinct nothing more, and his glasses slid off his face with the sudden movement. He reached for them. He missed. The glasses hit the dirt, rolled once, and disappeared over the ridge with a hollow tuck. The world instantly blurred. Shapes became smudges. The trail turned into a pale ribbon floating inside fog. Voices above him sounded distant, warped. "Leonard, don't move!" He tried to answer, but before he could, the ground under his boot crumbled. He slipped, not off the cliff, but sideways. His shoulder slammed into rock as he rolled onto a narrow ledge hidden below the main trail. He froze. The ledge was barely wide enough for a single foot. To one side, a wall of cold stone. To the other, nothing but open air. He couldn't see the drop, but he could feel it, an emptiness pulling at him, patient and deep. Above him, the group called his name, but he couldn't tell from where. The fog swallowed everything. Then he heard it. A rustle. A step. Another. Something moving through the pines far below. He narrowed his eyes. Nothing focused. Only sound. A coyote's thin, searching yip drifted upward. Leonard swallowed. Without his glasses, he had no depth perception, no safe path. And a long stretch of cliff he couldn't clearly see. And the animal below had already found his scent. "Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Older survivors connect across miles, and I'd like to know how far this story is reaching." Leonard Hayes wasn't reckless. If anything, he was careful to a fault. At 72, he'd spent most of his retirement sticking to routines, morning stretches, short walks, weekly group hikes with people his age. He liked the predictability of it. He liked knowing that his body, even slower than before, could still carry him where he needed to go. He'd worn glasses since he was 9 years old. Without them, the world turned into soft colors and drifting shapes. His daughter used to joke that he could walk straight past her at the grocery store without noticing. Leonard laughed every time, but it was true. Blurred edges made him uneasy, made him feel older. That morning, he almost didn't join the hike. His right knee had been stiff when he got out of bed and the forecast mentioned fog. But staying home felt worse. He needed the air, the quiet, the rhythm of boots on dirt. Nature made him feel more present than any doctor's appointment or pill organizer. The trail they chose wasn't dangerous. Locals used it all the time. Families, retirees, even teenagers who ignored the rules. It curved through pines, followed the ridge for a stretch, then opened into a lookout with a view of the valley. A peaceful place, predictable. He trusted that. The others walked ahead in small conversations, and Leonard kept pace easily. He didn't think once about the rocky slope above them, or how fog changes sound, or how loose dirt at the edge can shift after a cold night. He should have, because with his glasses gone, and the group too far above to guide him, Leonard now stood alone on a ledge no wider than his boot. Fog tightening around him, depth vanishing, and an unseen coyote circling somewhere below. He wasn't supposed to be alone, but he was. And what waited along the ledge would test more than just his footing. At first, Leonard didn't move at all. He pressed his shoulder into the cold rock wall, fingers spread wide as if he could somehow sink into the stone. The ledge beneath his boots felt impossibly narrow, no more than the width of his foot and a thin strip of crumbling dirt. Every breath made tiny grains shift under his soles. "Leonard, can you hear me?" the guide called from somewhere above and to his left. "I'm here," Leonard shouted back. The fog grabbed his voice and dragged it sideways. I slipped. Don't move, just stay where you are, okay? We're calling for help." Easy for you to say, he thought. You're not standing on the edge of nothing. He blinked hard, trying to force his vision to sharpen. Without his glasses, the world was a smear of pale grays and darker shapes. He could make out the flat plane of rock inches from his face, and a faint, ghostly stripe that might be the ledge stretching ahead. But the drop beside him was pure blur. His mind filled it with the worst possibilities. Don't look down, just don't look down. The coyote's yip came again, distant but clearer than before. Leonard turned his head toward the sound and instantly regretted it. The brief shift in balance made the dirt under his right boot crumble. His foot slid half an inch toward the void. He slammed his palm against the rock, heart punching at his ribs. "Okay," he whispered. Slow. Everything slow. He had been scared before. A storm on a lake in his 30s that turned the sky black in minutes. A car sliding on black ice when he was 49, the rear end swinging wide while headlights rushed toward him. The first time his chest had tightened in the grocery store, and the doctor later called it mild, as if that word belonged anywhere near heart attack. He had survived those, but he'd had his eyes then. Now every shadow looked like empty air, and every step felt like a question he might not get to ask twice. Above him, blurry shapes paced along the ridge. He heard the faint electronic beep of a phone hunting for a signal, the murmur of anxious voices arguing whether they should try to reach him or just wait. Part of him wanted someone, anyone, to ignore the guide and climb down. Another part knew that if they tried and misjudged the distance, they might fall right past him. "Leonard," the guide called again, younger voice, trying to sound steady. "We reached emergency services. They're sending a team. You just need to stay put, all right?" "How long?" Leonard shouted. A pause. Wind filled the space where the truth should have been. "Not long," the guide said. Leonard let out a breath that didn't feel like relief. His fingers were already numb from clinging to the rock. His right knee, the same one that had complained when he got out of bed that morning, throbbed from holding the same bent position too long. Staying put sounded good in theory, but the ledge under his boots wasn't steel. It was dirt and rock and whatever root still held it together. He could feel it eroding by millimeters, gravity tugging at every loose grain. "If it keeps crumbling and I just stand here, I go with it." He risked a glance along the ledge. It seemed to curve along the rock face, hugging it like a thin, uneven scar. Somewhere ahead, the blur widened in a way that might be his hope, or just fog playing tricks. He swallowed. Staying might kill him. Moving might kill him faster. The coyote rustled through underbrush below. This time he heard a stone dislodge and bounce. It clicked once, twice, then vanished into silence that went on too long. So, a long drop then. "Hey!" Leonard shouted, more to hear another human sound than anything. "Go find something else to bother." His voice cracked on the last word. The coyote didn't answer. It just kept moving, invisible in the mess of gray. Cold seeped through his jacket. Moisture beaded on the rock, dampening his palms. His breath appeared in short white puffs that drifted away and disappeared. He tested his right foot, shifting his weight a fraction of an inch. The ledge held. He slid his left boot forward, not lifting it, just dragging it along the dirt until it found purchase. Moving like this felt ridiculous, like shuffling across a narrow board in the dark. But at least both feet stayed in contact with something solid. "Leonard, what are you doing?" The guide's voice came sharper. "Trying to find somewhere a little wider," Leonard called back, surprised by how calm he sounded. "This spot is giving way. Leonard, please, just stay where you are." "They're on their way. They always say that," he muttered. He moved his left foot another inch, then his right. The wall scraped his shoulder, dust smearing across his jacket. His fingertips explored every shallow groove they could find, clinging to rough edges that bit into his skin. He didn't rush. Rushing was for younger legs and better balance. Every inch was deliberate, a negotiation with gravity. One step, breathe, next step. Time untied itself. He couldn't tell if he had moved 3 feet or 6. The ledge felt the same, narrow, fragile, never quite trustworthy. The only change was the sound of the coyote, no longer directly below, but somewhere behind and to the side. "It's just an animal," he reminded himself. "Not a monster. It's doing what it needs to do to survive. So am I." A stronger gust of wind knifed around the ridge and shoved at his back. Leonard flattened himself against the rock, boots scraping for purchase. His left foot slipped. For one terrifying second, there was nothing under it but empty air. He didn't think. He dropped his weight into his right leg and slammed his hip into the wall, letting the pain anchor him. Dirt tumbled off the edge beside him in a small, deadly cascade. "Leonard!" someone shouted above. "You okay?" "Still here," he called, though his throat felt tight. His right thigh burned, muscles trembling from effort. His calves knotted, protesting the constant tension. His hands shook, not with the fine tremor of age, but with the raw strain of holding on. You can't stand like this forever, he told himself. You need somewhere you can rest, even just for a minute. Turning around was impossible. Moving backward felt worse. The only direction that made any sense at all was forward, into the blur. He closed his eyes for a moment, not because it helped him see, but because it simplified the world into touch and sound. Rock under his fingertips, grit under his boots, the hush of wind against the cliff, the restless scrape of small paws on loose stones below. He pictured the map he'd glanced at that morning, the one nailed to the post by the trailhead. The ridge line, the lookout. Contour lines stacked close together along one side of the path. Somewhere on this face there might be an old side cut, a service ledge, a runoff channel, any place where the rock jutted out just enough to give him a little more room. You don't need safety, he thought. Just something less dangerous than this. He opened his eyes again. Nothing had magically sharpened into focus, but he felt a thin strip of stubbornness settle in his chest. Okay, Leonard whispered. One more walk, old man. Nice and easy. He slid his left foot forward until his boot bumped against something solid, a rock embedded in the ledge, larger than the others. Carefully, he set his weight on it. It held. He followed with his right foot, inch by inch, fingers dragging along the wall like a blind man reading the world. He took another step. The ledge tilted slightly upward beneath him, then leveled out. Another step. The void at his side felt just as deep, but his toes suddenly had more stone under them than before. He froze, testing it. This section widened, not by much, maybe half a boot length more, but enough that he could plant his foot flat instead of sideways. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. For the first time since he'd fallen, he could stand without feeling like a single twitch would send him over. Leonard? The guide's voice floated down again, thinner now. You still with us? Yeah, Leonard called. I found a spot, a little wider. He didn't mention the way his legs shook or how his fingers throbbed or how his heart pounded against his ribs like it was trying to leave. He didn't say that his vision was still a blur and that he still couldn't tell where the ledge ended and the fall began. He just pressed his back against the rock, boots planted on that slightly wider patch of stone, and listened to the wind, to the distant voices above, to the soft, patient movements of the coyote below. For the moment he wasn't falling, but the day was nowhere near finished with him. Leonard kept one hand on the rock wall and the other hovering near his chest, as if steadying his breath would somehow steady the ground. The fog pressed into him like a cold blanket, muting the world, shrinking it to just the width of the ledge and the echo of his heartbeat in his ears. He pushed his left boot forward another inch. The stone beneath it felt slick, colder. He shifted his weight carefully, slow, deliberate. Every step was a promise he made to himself that he could still move, still balance, still stay alive. The coyote rustled again below. Not a growl, not a warning, just presence, a reminder that he wasn't alone on this wall of stone. Leonard swallowed hard. You're fine, he whispered. You've walked harder trails. It wasn't true. Not like this. Not half-blind. Not with a drop he couldn't measure waiting beside him with every twitch of his foot. He pressed forward. The ledge sloped downward again, just enough that gravity tugged at him. His boots scraped for grip. Tiny stones clicked off the edge and vanished into the fog. He froze, muscles tightening to the point of pain. Easy, he whispered. Easy now. Above him, voices blurred through the fog, muffled, anxious, trying to guide him but unable to reach him. Leonard, stay where you are. We're trying to get a signal again. Don't move. If only it were that simple. He couldn't stay. The ledge where he'd first landed had already been crumbling. Standing still meant trusting the rock to hold him indefinitely, and nothing in nature promised that. The mountain didn't care if he clung to it forever or slipped away in seconds. It would only do what mountains do. So he kept moving. Another step. Short breath. Another step. His right knee shook under him. The same knee that had warned him that morning not to hike. The same knee he had ignored. Fog shifted ahead. Just a change in density, a thinning, but it was enough for Leonard to make out something new. A darker mass along the wall to his right. Not a rock, not a tree root. A recess. A small hollow in the stone. Barely large enough for one person, but deeper than the ledge. A tiny pocket of safety. Leonard's breath caught. That's it, he whispered. That's where you're going. But reaching it meant crossing a part of the ledge where the stone angled sharply downward, worse than anything he'd crossed so far. He tested the ground with his boot. The tilt was immediate. No choice, he whispered. He leaned harder into the wall, angling his torso so that his weight pulled upward instead of outward. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that gravity wanted him and would take him the second he trusted his feet more than the stone. Just keep contact, he murmured. Contact with the wall, don't rush. He dragged his left foot forward, finding the narrowest sliver of flatness. He eased his weight into it. His boot slid. Not much, just a half-inch, but enough that his body lurched sideways into the void. His right hand slapped the wall, fingers scraping, skin splitting across one knuckle. He gasped and forced his weight back toward the stone. Don't fall, don't fall. He swallowed bile. His vision swam with fog and panic. Then he heard the coyote again. This time it wasn't below, it was behind him, climbing. A dry scrape of claws on rock. A soft grunt as it pulled its weight upward. Leonard didn't turn. He couldn't. But every hair on his neck rose. Go away, he whispered. But animals didn't negotiate. He pushed his right foot forward, body trembling. He was close to the recess. Maybe 4 feet, maybe 5. Hard to tell when distance blurred into light and shadow. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and something else. Earth, maybe fur. The coyote was near. Leonard felt it as much as heard it. The brush of movement through the fog. A low huff, like a curious breath. Not now, Leonard whispered. Not now, please. His right foot found a small rise in the rock, a knob of stone protruding just enough to catch his boot. He leaned onto it, shifting his weight inch by inch. His left foot slid in close behind. He was almost there. The recess yawned like a dark oval in the fog, shallow but wide enough to lean into, to breathe in, to exist, without imagining the drop waiting beside him. He reached for it. His hand touched empty air. Too far. He pressed himself forward, stretching his arm farther, fingertips searching, desperate. There, stone. Cold, solid, reassuring. He shifted his weight. The ledge dipped again, dirt shearing away under his boot. Leonard gritted his teeth and lunged the final inch, slamming his shoulder into the hollow. The stone stopped him, held him. His boot slipped, but the wall cradled his weight, anchoring him long enough to drag his feet fully inside. He collapsed into the recess, chest heaving. His fingers curled into tiny grooves in the rock, anchoring him farther from the ledge. The coyote rustled to a stop below. Leonard didn't look. He couldn't see well enough for it to matter. He just pressed his forehead to the stone, letting the cold seep through his skin. Still here, he whispered. Still here. Time passed. He didn't know how long. Minutes, maybe more. The fog thickened, then thinned, shifting like breath. The voices above faded into distant murmurs. Leonard closed his eyes. He remembered his daughter's voice teasing him about losing his glasses the day they went to the state fair. He remembered the feeling of being younger, steady, strong, free from this trembling his legs couldn't hide. He remembered believing he still had years before fear would look at him, the way this mountain did. He opened his eyes again. The fog moved differently now, pulled by an updraft. The brush below crackled. The coyote moved, unsure, perhaps sensing danger, or an opportunity. It was close enough that Leonard could imagine its silhouette, even if he couldn't see it clearly. He wasn't safe, not really, but he wasn't exposed anymore, and he wasn't done. He took a slow breath, leaned against the recess wall and whispered, "You're going to keep going, one more ledge, one more minute, just like life, just one more." Below, the coyote answered with a soft, uncertain yip. Leonard lifted his chin, not afraid, just aware. He wasn't ready to die on this mountain, and he wasn't done fighting to stay alive. Has anything like this ever happened to you? Getting lost, hurt, or scared far from help? If you feel comfortable, share your story. Older survivors understand each other more than most people realize. Leonard stayed pressed into the shallow recess, letting the stone cool his forehead, his cheek, his cracked knuckles. His breath came slow but steady now. The tremor in his legs settled into something manageable, an ache instead of a threat. But he knew the recess was only a temporary refuge. A pause, a breath. The mountain didn't care that he'd found a hollow barely large enough to fit him. The ledge would narrow again ahead. The fog would thicken again. The coyote would keep climbing. He leaned back, letting his spine rest fully against the rock, and listened. The coyote was quiet now, just a faint shuffle in the brush below. Not a predator stalking, but an animal assessing. Curious, patient, waiting to see what he would do next. Leonard didn't blame it. Everything on Earth was just trying to survive. He exhaled through his nose, rubbing his fingers against the recessed wall until sensation returned. "Okay," he whispered. "You can't stay here." His voice sounded steadier than he expected. He turned his left shoulder outward, slowly testing the angle. He needed to get his boots back onto the ledge, one at a time, carefully, deliberately. The ledge sloped downward from here, but maybe there was a wider section just beyond the curve. He had to assume there was. No one survived by assuming there was nothing ahead. He placed his left boot down onto the ledge first. It scraped rock, searching for a flat spot. He shifted his weight onto it, barely committing, testing the ground like a blind man tapping ahead with a cane. It held. His right foot followed. The ledge tilted slightly but did not crumble. Leonard inhaled sharply and stepped out of the recess, back into the open air above the drop. "Still here," he murmured. "Still here." He kept his left hand on the wall, fingers splayed wide for stability. With his right hand, he trailed along the stone to feel the surface. The rock here was smoother, weathered by wind, maybe water long ago. The smoothness helped and hurt. Easier to glide along, harder to grip. Fog pressed in again, thicker, swirling in slow curls. His breath mixed with it in pale clouds. Everything beyond 2 feet from his face turned into white blur. He shuffled forward. The ledge dipped. His stomach tightened. He hugged the wall harder. A faint sound drifted down from somewhere above. Shouting, distant, thinned by fog. "Leonard, rescue team is on the trail." He blinked. The words were faint, but they were real. "Here!" he shouted. "I'm here!" His voice hit the fog and bent sideways, disappearing into the drop. If they heard him, they didn't answer. He took another step. The ledge's slope changed again, flattening out. That was good. But it also narrowed, badly. His left boot felt the edge first. The front half hung off into nothing. He froze. "Keep your weight back, heel into the rock, don't panic." He slid his foot along the wall instead, shifting closer, until he found another patch of solid ground. His heart pounded. The blur in his vision pulsed with each beat. He inched forward. Then the fog thinned, just enough that a shape appeared ahead. A vertical crack in the rock, thin but deep. A seam running straight down the wall, like a scar. Leonard blinked hard, trying to focus. Cracks could mean one of two things: a handhold or a warning. He reached for it. His fingers slipped inside easily, almost too easily. Moisture coated the stone inside the crack. He pulled his hand back, confused, then realized water was running down the seam. Slowly, silently. A trickle, a seepage from somewhere above. Water meant weathering. Weathering meant weakness. Weak rock. Crumbling points. He frowned. "Not great," he whispered. Not great at all, but he had no choice. Cracks could crumble, but they also gave grip. He slipped his fingers back inside and tested the hold. It felt solid enough to support part of his weight. He leaned into it, shifting his body slightly away from the void. Another shuffle step. His boot skidded. Just a half inch, but enough to make him gasp. "Easy, Leonard," he murmured. "You're doing fine." Below, the coyote moved again. This time he heard it more clearly, a soft growl, low and uncertain. Not aggression, not yet, but interest. Leonard didn't look down. He couldn't. Without his glasses, there was nothing to see. He focused on the crack. Step, slide, breathe, repeat. He moved, little by little. At one point, the wall jutted outward, forcing him to turn his body sideways. The shift made the drop at his side feel even larger, an endless blur pulling at him. He pressed his cheek against the cold stone, letting its solidity ground him. "You're okay," he whispered. "You're okay." He kept going. Minutes passed, or maybe they were seconds. Fog distorted time, turning every moment into an endless stretch of white. Then the ledge dipped again, this time more sharply. His right boot hit the angled section and slipped. His knee buckled, his shoulder slammed into the wall. Pain flared down his arm. A shower of small stones tumbled off the edge beside him. He clung to the wall, breath sharp and ragged. "No," he whispered. "Not now." Not now. He steadied himself, pulling his trembling legs back under control. He slid forward inch by inch, searching for the next foothold. Then, something touched his ankle. Soft, quick, gone. Leonard jerked, nearly losing balance. What? A faint huff came from below. The coyote. Close. Too close. It wasn't attacking. It wasn't even climbing with purpose. It was just curious, following, wondering about the strange, stumbling creature above it. But curiosity could kill him as surely as aggression. He steadied his breathing again. "You go your way," he whispered. "I'll go mine." He moved again. The wall straightened. The ledge flattened slightly. Not by much, but enough for him to stand without shaking. He exhaled. Fog shifted ahead again, thinner now. Through it something loomed. Dark, jagged, horizontal. A fallen tree trunk, wedged between two sections of rock, half suspended over the drop. Old, weather-beaten, thick with rot, blocking the ledge, or bridging it. Leonard blinked, trying to make sense of the shape. It stretched from his side of the ledge to the next section, like a crude, accidental bridge. Maybe it had fallen years ago. Maybe storms had lodged it there. Either way, it was the only path forward. He swallowed. The trunk wasn't wide, maybe 12 inches across, slippery, rotting, tilting slightly downward, but wide enough to cross. If you had depth perception, if you had balance, if you had your glasses. Leonard had none of those things. He stared at the blur that was the log. It looked like a dark smear against white. He blinked, struggling to define its edges. He couldn't, but he could feel the cold wind pushing against his back. He could hear the coyote below. He could sense the instability spreading through his legs with each passing minute. He didn't have time to wait. He placed one hand on the log. Bark flaked under his fingers. Damp. Soft. He tested its weight. It held. "Okay," he whispered. "This is it." He took a breath so deep his ribs ached, and then Leonard stepped onto the fallen tree. His boot sank slightly into the soft bark, and for a split second, the world rocked. Not from wind, not from motion, but from pure, raw fear. But he didn't fall. He took another breath and moved forward, one careful step at a time, into the fog, into the blur, into survival. The log shifted under Leonard's weight, not by much, just enough for him to feel the panic bloom under his ribs. The bark beneath his boot was soft and damp, the kind of damp that turned wood into a sponge. He kept his left hand pressed against the wall, his fingertips searching for anything to anchor him as he edged forward. A step, half a breath, another step. The fog wrapped around him, curling over the log, distorting it into a dark smear that threatened to vanish every time he blinked. Without his glasses, the world ahead had no edge, no certainty, just vague shapes and the whisper of wind. The log dipped slightly, then steadied. Leonard forced himself to exhale. "You're doing fine," he whispered, though his heartbeat pounded so loudly he could barely hear himself. He kept moving. The middle of the log sagged more noticeably, bending under his weight. A soft crack came from within the wood, not loud, not dramatic, but just enough to freeze him mid-step. "Don't break," he whispered. "Not now." He waited. Nothing else cracked. The mountain breathed around him. Fog drifted past. Somewhere below, the coyote shifted again, paws scraping stone. Every sound made Leonard grip the log harder, toes curling inside his boots. He took another step. This time the log rolled a fraction beneath him. Not a full rotation, but enough to tilt his balance. His right arm flung outward on instinct, searching for anything, and found nothing but cold air. He lurched sideways. His boot slipped. The world tilted. He slammed his shoulder into the stone wall, catching himself with a grunt. Pain shot down his arm, sharp and immediate. He stayed pressed there, body shaking, breath shallow. "That's enough excitement," he muttered through clenched teeth. Slowly, he regained his balance. The trick was to lean more weight into the wall, let it absorb some of the instability. Trusting the log alone was suicide. He edged forward again. One careful step, then another. Finally, his boot reached solid ground. A small, uneven landing carved naturally from the rock. He stepped off the log with a shudder, nearly collapsing as his legs unlocked. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Not to rest, but to reset the world. To remind himself that the path ahead, blurred or not, still existed. When he opened them again, the fog had thinned just enough to reveal part of the ledge ahead. Still narrow, still treacherous, but wider than the log. He pushed himself upright. "You're not done," he whispered. "Not yet." He moved forward again. The ledge curved around the mountain, bending into deeper fog. As he followed it, the wall's texture changed, less smooth, more jagged, as though weather had chewed it unevenly. His fingertips dragged over sharp edges, giving him a sense of shape he couldn't see. After several minutes of careful progress, the ledge widened for the first time. Not by much, maybe 2 feet instead of 1, but enough that Leonard could stand with his boots fully planted, shoulders no longer brushing the wall. He stopped there, breathing hard. The fog lifted in patches, revealing glimpses of the valley. He couldn't see details, only pale shapes, the faint suggestion of treetops, the ghost of a river far below, but he could hear something new. Voices. Closer this time. He blinked, leaning out slightly to listen. "Leonard, if you can hear us, keep talking." Another voice. "We're trying to reach a safe path down to you." He stepped toward the sound. "I'm here. I'm still here." His voice bounced across the mountain, muffled but stronger than before. Then an answer. "Stay calm, we see your position." Leonard's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Thank God," he whispered, but the relief lasted only a moment. The fog swelled again, swallowing everything. Then came another sound, a soft scrape behind him. Leonard stiffened, not from above, not from the side, from the ledge behind him. The coyote. He didn't turn. He couldn't. Turning meant shifting his balance, and one mistake would undo everything he'd survived so far. He listened. The coyote's paws clicked softly on stone. Slow, hesitant, curious. It wasn't stalking him. It wasn't hunting him. It was following the strange, struggling figure that had descended into its territory. Leonard raised his voice slightly. "You stay back," he murmured. The animal didn't understand words, but tone was universal. He stepped forward, the ledge narrowing again. A rock loosened and tumbled off the side, bouncing into emptiness. Leonard flinched. The coyote stopped at the sound, then paced, paws scraping. Leonard swallowed. If he panicked, he'd die. If he turned, he'd fall. If he froze, the ledge might crumble under him. So he did the only thing left. He moved, carefully, deliberately, step by step. The ledge bent sharply again. A thin crack running along the wall gave him something to hold as he maneuvered around the curve. Wind picked up, whistling along the ridge with a low howl. Fog swirled upward, spiraling against the cliffside, wrapping around Leonard like cold breath. He shivered. "You can do this," he told himself. The next stretch of ledge was the worst yet, tilted downward, littered with loose stones and only a foot wide. The kind of path that demanded perfect footing and perfect vision. He had neither, but he had no choice. He placed his left foot onto the slanted stone, testing it. It shifted. He pressed harder. It held. He slid his right foot beside it. The wall here offered almost nothing, smooth, cold, resistant to gripping fingers. He had to flatten his palm and drag it along the surface just to feel connected to something real. Halfway across, he froze. The coyote barked, a sharp, startled sound. Leonard jerked instinctively, boot sliding a fraction. He clenched his jaw, pressing harder into the wall. "Easy," he breathed. "Easy." The animal seemed spooked by something else. The wind, maybe, or the shifting fog. Its paws scrambled on stone, then steadied. Leonard pushed forward again. Finally, the ledge widened again. Small, but enough to breathe. He stepped onto it and sagged against the rock, chest heaving. His entire body trembled. Legs, arms, even his jaw. His breath shuddered out of him, fog curling around each exhale. He looked out into the white blur. Somewhere out there, a rescue team was climbing toward him. Somewhere beyond the fog, people were working their way down the safe path, ropes in hand, gear ready. He wasn't saved yet, but for the first time since he fell, he believed he could be. He took another breath, then another. He moved forward, step by step, toward whatever waited next. Leonard felt the air shift before he understood why. The wind, always restless, suddenly carried sharper sounds. Metal clinking, boots scraping rock, voices with direction, purpose, and confidence. Not the confused shouts from earlier. Not panic, rescue. He stopped moving, palms flat against the cliff, listening with everything he had left. "Anchor that line! Watch your footing, loose edge there. Set the secondary. He exhaled shakily. The sound was almost a sob of relief. I'm here, he shouted into the fog. I'm on the ledge. I'm still here. The fog bent his voice and dragged it outward, stealing some of its strength. For a moment, he thought it had disappeared again. Then an answer came, loud and certain. Leonard! We hear you. Stay put. Another voice followed, older, calmer, the kind that made people steady their breathing without realizing it. Leonard, we've got a team above you. Do not move unless we tell you to. We're coming down. He squeezed his eyes shut, letting the words sink in. Thank God, he whispered. Thank God. A faint scuffle below reminded him he wasn't the only creature on the cliff. The coyote's soft paws scraped rock, followed by a quick exhale, but it didn't climb. The noises above unsettled it. After a moment it trotted away, stones clicking beneath its feet. Leonard sagged against the wall. Good, he whispered. Go on. Find safer ground than this. A metallic screech sounded above, carabiner on rock. Then the rapid zip of rope sliding through a descender. Dust rained down on him from somewhere overhead. Leonard, the older rescuer called. We're sending a line down. It'll swing close to you. Reach for it when I tell you. Okay, Leonard shouted back. Just talk me through it. Another voice. Lower! The rope dropped past him, brushing his coat. He reached, missed, and nearly lost balance. He jerked back against the wall, gasping. I can't see it, he yelled. My glasses are gone. A pause. Then that same calm voice again, closer now. That's all right, Leonard. I'm the one coming to you. He heard the rescuers rappel, controlled, practiced, confident. A shape formed in the fog, human descending hand over hand, harness creaking softly. Hey there, the man said gently. Name's Carter. I'm about to come even with you, all right? Just stay still. You've done the hardest part already. Leonard managed a weak laugh. Doesn't feel like it. Carter dropped the last couple of feet and steadied himself on the ledge beside Leonard. Even blurred by fog and bad vision, Leonard could tell the man wasn't young. His voice had the weight of experience behind it, the steadiness of someone who had rescued more than a few people from worse places. Okay, Carter said. I'm going to clip you into my system. Once you're tied to me, you're not going anywhere unless I go with you. Good, Leonard whispered. Hands worked at his waist, sure, efficient, narrating every movement. I'm putting the harness around you. Step your right foot up. Good. Left foot. Perfect. Now I'm locking you in. A click. Another. A tug. The rope tightened. Leonard, Carter said, lowering his voice so only he could hear, I'm going to take some of your weight now. Lean back just a bit. Trust the rope. Trust. The one thing he'd been afraid to do for hours. He swallowed hard and leaned the smallest amount. The harness caught him. The rope held. He gasped. Not in fear, but relief. Some of the pressure, the brutal tension in his legs dissolved. There you go, Carter said. Now we move. They moved as one. Carter stayed half a step above, half a step behind, always close enough to brace Leonard if he slipped. Instructions came calmly. Small step to your right. Watch the dip here. I've got the rope tight. Lean into it. That's it. Good. Once, near a sharp downward slant, Leonard's boot slid. His body pitched sideways. The rope snapped tight. Carter's arm clamped across his chest. I've got you, he said firmly. Slow breath, Leonard. You're okay. They paused until Leonard felt the ground under him again. The ledge narrowed, widened, narrowed again. Minutes crawled. His legs shook uncontrollably, a mix of fear, exhaustion, and age he couldn't hide. You're doing better than you think, Carter said. Most people half your age fall apart long before this. Leonard huffed a laugh. Not sure if that makes me proud or terrified. A little of both is normal. They reached a section where the rock curved inward. Carter angled them upward now, guiding Leonard toward a steep slope of dirt and stone that led back toward the main trail. This part will be harder, Carter warned. More climbing, but it's stable. More room, more stone. I'll do most of the pulling. Leonard nodded, though he couldn't truly see him. They climbed. He placed his palms where Carter guided them. He pushed through the pain in his knee, the fire in his thighs, the burn in his arms. Each pull upward felt like lifting the weight of the entire mountain. Halfway up, his knee buckled sharply. Pain flared. Carter stopped immediately. Talk to me. It's the knee, Leonard gasped. Bad one. Can you put any weight on it? A little. Good enough. Hands will do more now. Left leg helps stabilize. I'll take more load with the rope. They adapted. It was slower, clumsier. Several times Leonard had to stop, panting, forehead resting against cold stone. Each time, Carter's voice grounded him. Deep breath. You're not alone. We're making progress. You're tougher than you think. Eventually, the fog thinned enough that light, real daylight, filtered through. Leonard blinked until shapes sharpened. A ridge, feet above him, people moving, shadowy outlines with outstretched arms. We're close, Carter said. Just a few more steps. Hands reached down. Easy. Got him. Careful with that knee. Bring him up slow. Carter guided him the final feet. Leonard's boots found flat earth. The trail. The blessed, wide, solid trail. He stood. He sat. He breathed. Someone pressed water into his hand. Someone else wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. Shapes gathered around him. His hiking group, anxious and relieved. Carter unclipped the harness and crouched in front of him, his blurred outline steady. You did the impossible today, Carter said. Most people with perfect vision wouldn't have lasted where you were. Leonard nodded, swallowing hard. Emotion thickened his throat. I didn't think I'd make it. But you did, Carter said, because you didn't stop moving. Leonard looked out at the fog-shrouded valley beyond the trail. It wasn't less dangerous, but now it felt different. Not a place where he almost died, but a place he refused to die. He let out a long, shaking breath. Let's go home, he murmured, and the rescuers helped him to his feet. Leonard sat in the back of the rescue vehicle with a blanket over his shoulders, watching the fog drift across the treetops as the team drove him slowly down the mountain road. His vision was still a blur, but shapes grew familiar again. Guardrails, pine silhouettes, the shifting outline of the paramedic beside him. His knee throbbed. His hands were scraped raw. His muscles trembled from exhaustion. But he was alive. He kept replaying the ledge in his mind. The sound of gravel sliding off into silence, the hollow blur of the cliff at his side, the moment the log dipped beneath him, the coyote's quiet curiosity, Carter's calm voice cutting through fear. Most of all, he remembered standing on the trail again, solid ground under his boots, the weight of the rope loosening, the world widening around him. Age had changed him, yes, slowed him, softened him, stolen pieces of strength he once took for granted, but it hadn't taken everything. It hadn't taken his will. As the truck rounded a bend, a wash of sunlight broke through the thinning fog, warm and unexpected. Leonard lifted his chin, letting it touch his face, and felt something inside him settle. He had survived a place that did not forgive mistakes, and he would carry that truth with him. CTA. If this story touched you in any way, feel free to share your thoughts below. Sometimes the hardest moments in life become the ones we learn from the most.